Reactive training systems.
Let's talk a little bit about periodization strategies. Which periodization strategy is the best one? And I'll just go ahead and start out by saying this in the beginning. It's my most sincere hope that at least one of you will write in the comments below, Team DUP checking in. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some other training strategies or periodization models really, and talk about some of their strengths and weaknesses. To start us off, I already mentioned DUP. DUP stands for Daily Undulating Periodization. It's not a complete training strategy, complete periodization model by itself. All it means is that there's a daily undulation pattern, that there's a daily fluctuation in the intensity level, and that drives the daily microcyclic periodization. Normally, as it's seen in powerlifting, it's paired with linear periodization. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's got to be paired with something a bit more long-term, and linear periodization can provide that framework. And something that you'll find as you look at all these different periodization models, it's all kind of derived from linear being the granddaddy model. So let's talk a little bit about linear periodization. All linear periodization means is that we go from high volume, low intensity training to low volume, high intensity training over the course of the training cycle. Now, there are infinite variations within that theme, because you could go from just a little bit low intensity and a little bit higher volume to, its opposite, or you can go from very low intensity and very high volume to its opposite. Basically, how high is high, how low is low. You see a linear periodization overtone in Coach Shako's training programs, but the fluctuation is a bit muted. He starts out lower in intensity and higher in volume, but it's not to an extreme degree. Whereas if you look at lots of, say, old school powerlifting programs, where you start with a couple weeks of tens and you end with a couple weeks of doubles, they start, comparatively speaking, at extremely high volume and finish with extremely high intensity. So there are infinite variations within this linear periodization theme, and it's something that you see is kind of a constant in all periodized programs, is that there's some sort of overall progression from high volume toward high intensity over the course of the training cycle. Now, DUP will use linear periodization as a backdrop, and then add to that daily fluctuations. And it's a method that the idea is that it allows your body to continue adapting to the stimulus, because it's providing a variation to that stimulus. Another periodization model that gets talked about quite a bit is block periodization, which is pretty cool in the way that it works out, because you can almost think of it as like a mini linear periodized model, but since it's superimposed on each other, it creates overall linear effects. So what I mean by that is, if you look at a single training cycle in a block periodization model, it's going to have an overall linear pattern. And then if you look at an annual plan that's created in a block periodization model, you'll not only see those linear effects within each training cycle, but the overall annual plan will have a linear pattern to it as well. Now, there's a lot more to go into with each of these strategies, and there's a lot more, especially with block periodization, there's a lot more I could tell you with some visuals and some visual representations. So if you are interested in this kind of thing, I encourage you to check out our new class that's going to be starting up in April. It's called Macrocycles, and in this we're going to be talking about all the stuff that goes along with macrocycles. We'll put a link in the description. You can check that stuff out to see what our lesson plans are, what topics we're going to cover and stuff like that. We'll cover these topics for sure, and we're going to get into a lot more depth with this stuff and get into a lot more applicability. It's going to build on our first class, which was microcycles, which is arguably the most important training cycle that you've got. But even if you were not able to attend microcycles, I don't think that you'll be lost when you're talking about macrocycles. And if you are, it shouldn't be difficult to get you caught up on a specific issue. So I hope you check that out. I hope this stuff is interesting to you. Thanks, have a good one.
Reactive training systems.